The Kentucky forest had seen storms before, but never silence like this. At dawn, a worn-out veteran named Jack Thompson walked with his German shepherd, Rusty, through the mist, two souls trying to outrun the echoes of war. Then Rusty stopped, ears up, body tense. Something beneath the moss caught the light. Not bone, not stone, but a human hand made of metal reaching from the earth. Who buried it here? And why was the wreck of a Bell AH-1Z Viper hidden in these forgotten hills? What Jack was about to uncover wasn't just wreckage. It was proof that some soldiers were never meant to come home. And the loyalty of one dog might be the only thing keeping that truth alive. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and subscribe if you believe courage still walks beside loyalty. The dawn broke quietly over the Kentucky highlands, mist curling through the pines like pale smoke from an old campfire. Rain had passed in the night, leaving the air damp and cold, the kind that settled into bones. Somewhere far off, a woodpecker tapped against a hollow trunk, the forest's slow heartbeat returning to life. Jack Thompson moved through the haze with the easy caution of a man who'd learned long ago never to take silence for safety. At 48, the former Marine had the look of someone carved from the same rough stone as the mountains around him. Tall, broad-shouldered, his skin weathered and freckled from years of sun and engine grease. His hair, once dark, had faded to the color of ash. A short beard framed his jaw, hiding a small scar that curved beneath his chin. A memento from Helmand Province he never talked about. Life after the Corps hadn't been kind. These days, Jack worked part-time as a mechanic in a one-horse town called Pine Hollow, fixing old trucks and chainsaws for people who paid more in gratitude than dollars. Nights were long, the silence longer. He didn't mind the quiet anymore. It was honest. His only real company was Rusty, a 5-year-old German shepherd with a russet black coat, a white patch on his chest, and eyes like liquid amber. Jack had rescued him from the county shelter 2 winters ago. In truth, it was the dog who had done the saving. Rusty had a soldier's discipline and a saint's patience, and somehow he always knew when Jack's mind drifted back to Afghanistan. When the nightmares came, Rusty would nudge his hand or rest his head on Jack's knee until the shaking stopped. That morning, they had gone into the woods to hunt. Or, at least that was the excuse. Jack wasn't after deer. He was after quiet. The mist muffled the world, and the forest seemed to breathe with him, each exhale carrying away a fragment of old pain. Then Rusty froze. The dog's head lifted, ears sharp, body rigid. He sniffed once, twice, then gave a low growl that rippled through the stillness. "What is it, boy?" Jack whispered. Rusty didn't answer, only broke into a trot off the trail, toward a part of the woods few dared to wander. The northern ravine known as the Hollow, a stretch of land fenced off decades ago when the military used these mountains for flight training. Locals still said compasses spun there, and the birds avoided it. Jack hesitated. The Hollow had been off limits since before he was born. But when Rusty barked again, a sharp, urgent sound, he followed. Branches scraped his jacket, wet leaves slapped against his boots. The ground sloped downward, slick with moss and mud, until the forest opened into a narrow gorge choked with fog. There, half buried beneath years of rain and ivy, lay the skeleton of a machine. At first he thought it was an old logging crane, but as he drew closer, the outline sharpened. Twin rotor hubs, broken canopy, stub wings, protruding like the ribs of some dead creature. His breath caught. Bell AH-1Z Viper. A gunship, the kind that once hunted in pairs over desert skies, breathing fire and thunder. Jack had seen them in action during his second tour, hovering like hawks before unleashing hell. To see one here, silent and rotting in the heart of Kentucky, felt like finding a ghost from his own nightmares. Rusty circled the wreck, nose to the ground, whining softly. The helicopter had come down hard, nose first into the ravine. The fuselage was torn open, twisted metal jutted from the earth like shattered bone. The tail boom was cracked clean through, and yet, something about it felt deliberate. Not like a crash left to rot, but like a secret buried. Jack crouched beside the cockpit, brushing away wet leaves. No markings, no rescue tags, no rust-orange tape from investigators. The military never left hardware like this behind, not without reason. Then Rusty barked again, claws scraping at the mud near the left skid. Jack turned. "Rusty, leave it!" But the words died. The dog had uncovered something smooth and metallic protruding from the soil. For a heartbeat, Jack thought it was wreckage, then saw the shape of a wrist, a palm, fingers, a hand, not human, not entirely. The surface gleamed faintly beneath a layer of grime, brushed titanium, articulated knuckles, veins of fiber mesh beneath the plating. A prosthetic, but not any model Jack had ever seen. Military grade, years ahead of anything he'd encountered, even overseas. He knelt, brushing away more dirt until the forearm appeared, then stopped. The thing looked disturbingly natural, sculpted with precision to mimic flesh and bone. Embedded along the wrist joint, a small diode flickered red. Once, then died. Jack froze, pulse hammering. Rusty whined, pressing close to his leg. The dog's ears twitched, his gaze flicking between the hand and the shadows in the trees. Jack's first instinct was to report it. The second, stronger, older, was to understand it. He'd spent half his life following orders that told him not to ask questions. He wasn't that man anymore. He scanned the cockpit again. The canopy glass was shattered inward, as though something had tried to break out. Inside, vines had woven through the pilot's seat, wrapping the controls in green threads. No bones, no helmet, no body, just emptiness. He took out his phone. No signal, figures. Still, he snapped a photo, the screen flickering in the dim light. Then he spotted a small serial code etched near the base of the arm. VX091207. Jack exhaled slowly. "You're not supposed to be here, are you?" The forest didn't answer, only sighed. Somewhere overhead, a crow called. Long, low, and lonely. He stepped back, meaning to leave, but something made him pause. A faint hum trembled through the ground, so subtle he thought it was his imagination. Then, from deep inside the wreck, came a soft click, followed by a pulse of red light beneath the mud. Rusty growled, tail stiff. Jack's hand went instinctively to the rifle on his shoulder. The light blinked twice, then went still. Silence fell again, heavier than before. He knelt once more, eyes locked on the metallic hand. Beneath the dirt, the faintest warmth radiated from it, not from the sun, but from within. Jack whispered, "What the hell are you?" Rusty's bark shattered the silence. The sound echoed through the ravine, bouncing off stone walls. Above them, a murder of crows erupted into flight. Jack felt the hairs on his arms stand. He rose quickly, gripping Rusty's collar. "Let's go, boy." They climbed the slope without looking back. Yet, as they reached the ridge, Jack turned one last time. The wreck lay half hidden in the fog, motionless, except for the faint red glimmer pulsing once beneath the earth, like a heartbeat waking after years of sleep. The sky over Pine Hollow had turned the color of gunmetal by the time Jack Thompson returned to the ravine. The air was thick with the smell of rain and pine sap, heavy enough to make each breath feel like a decision. He told himself it was just curiosity that brought him back, but that was a lie. Marines didn't walk away from unfinished ground. If someone had gone down here, soldier or ghost, he had to know why. Rusty led the way through the slick underbrush, paws sinking into the mud, nose twitching at invisible trails. The forest was silent except for the drip of rain through the canopy. Every few steps, the dog stopped, ears rotating, his muscles tense beneath his russet-black fur. Jack followed slower, his rifle slung over his shoulder, his boots careful on the wet slope. The wreck lay just as he had left it, a corpse of a war machine swallowed by time. The Bell AH-1Z Viper, once a predator of the sky, now lay gutted and silent, vines crawling over its broken ribs. Its gray paint was mottled with moss, its rotors cracked like ancient bones. Jack crouched beside the spot where the metallic hand protruded from the soil. He pulled on his gloves and began to dig carefully, brushing away the wet dirt layer by layer until more of the form emerged, an arm, a shoulder, fragments of a chest plate. It wasn't just a prosthetic, it was part of a body. The titanium alloy had fused seamlessly with remnants of human bone, thin cables woven through what remained of muscle fibers like veins of silver. The face, if there had been one, was gone. Only a partial skull, half organic, half metal, stared back at him through the mud. "Christ almighty," he muttered. Rusty whined low beside him, uneasy. Jack had seen men rebuilt after combat, patched together with steel and carbon, but never like this. Whoever this was had been part of something far beyond military medicine. Something clinked beneath Rusty's paw. Jack reached down and pulled out a small, charred metal tag. The inscription was half burned but legible. Lieut. Cole P. McAdams, O positive, U.S. Marine Corps. The name sent a ripple through him. He remembered hearing whispers about a McAdams during his second deployment, an officer lost in a classified training op, listed as missing during field test. No body, no wreckage, just erased. Jack's fingers tightened on the tag. "Well, Colonel," he murmured, "looks like you didn't vanish after all." A glint caught his eye. Wedged between the ribs of the mechanical remains was a small rectangular object, a data chip, encased in hardened polymer. Etched faintly on its side, Graytech Defense Labs. Jack exhaled sharply. Graytech. That name he knew too well. He'd seen their logos stamped on drones, exosuits, and weapons in every corner of the war. They were the unseen contractors, the kind that trained their machines to think faster than soldiers and cost fewer letters to write home about. Rumors claimed they'd tested human-machine prototypes years ago. Volunteers who never came back. He turned the chip over in his hand. It felt unnaturally warm, almost pulsing. A small blue diode blinked once as his skin brushed the surface. He jerked slightly, startled. "Bioreactive," he muttered. "You've got your own damn heartbeat." Rusty growled. The diode flickered again, then stilled. The forest, too, seemed to hold its breath. Jack slipped the chip into his pocket, gathered the half-burned dog tag, and began the slow climb back. The wind carried a strange hum, faint, distant, mechanical. He glanced upward, uneasy, but saw only clouds pressing low over the mountains. By the time he reached his cabin, dusk had melted into darkness. The porch light buzzed weakly. Inside, the air smelled of wood smoke and oil, of old battles and older regrets. Jack placed the chip and the dog tag on the kitchen table beside his coffee mug. Rusty circled the room, then lay by the door, ears twitching. Jack sat heavily, rubbing the ache from his shoulders. He stared at the Graytech logo, memories surfacing. Men like Harlan Briggs, the company's face on the battlefield. Briggs had been the kind of man you didn't forget. Tall, immaculate even in sandstorms, his jaw square as granite, his smile thin and surgical. Jack had once seen him negotiate a ceasefire, not for peace, but for profit. If Graytech was involved here, this chip was poison. Still, curiosity gnawed at him. He powered up his old rugged laptop, a relic from his mechanic shop, patched with duct tape and prayer, and connected the chip using a universal cable. The screen flickered once, then filled with static before a single line appeared. "Accessing." Jack frowned. He hadn't entered a command. "Connection established. Biometric source verified." His stomach dropped. What the hell does that mean? The laptop's fan spun violently. Coordinates blinked across the screen, his own latitude and longitude, then vanished. The display went black. Jack yanked the cable free. Silence. Then Rusty jumped to his feet, barking furiously at the window. Jack grabbed his flashlight, stepped onto the porch. The forest stretched before him, motionless, soaked in silver fog. The beam of light caught only trees and rain, but Rusty wouldn't stop. He barked again, low, guttural warning. "Easy, boy," Jack whispered. That was when he heard it. A distant hum, low, mechanical, rhythmic. Not thunder, not a plane. The sound grew, pulsing overhead. He killed the flashlight and squinted at the sky. Between shifting clouds, a small light blinked red, then white, gliding silently in an arc. A drone, sleek, soundless, circling. It passed once, twice, then vanished beyond the ridge. Jack's pulse hammered. He backed into the cabin, bolted the door, turned off the lamp. Rusty pressed close, trembling but silent. Minutes passed. No more hum, no more light. Jack looked down at the table. The chip's blue glow was gone, replaced by a slow red pulse. It was transmitting. "Damn it," he muttered. Miles above, the satellite picked up the signal, a faint red thread against the dark sky. the data relayed to a secure facility outside Arlington, Virginia. Inside a glass-walled control room, Dr. Sarah Wynne leaned forward over a bank of monitors. She was in her late 30s, tall and slender, with chestnut hair cut to her shoulders and dark hazel eyes that saw too much and trusted too little. There was sharp intelligence in her movements, the kind that came from long nights and unhealed doubts. Once, she had joined Graytech believing their research could save soldiers' lives. Somewhere along the way, she had watched it destroy too many. "Satellite confirm?" she asked quietly. A young technician nodded. "Ping active, rural Kentucky. Coordinates verified, civilian area." Sarah's jaw tightened. "Route it to Briggs." She stared at the pulsing dot on the screen, her reflection hovering over it like a ghost. "Whoever found that chip," she murmured, "they just woke up the wrong kind of machine." Back in Pine Hollow, the rain fell harder. Jack sat by the dying fire, Rusty's head resting on his knee. The chip on the table blinked red, steady and patient, like a heartbeat counting down. "Looks like we've got company, buddy," Jack said quietly. Rusty's tail thumped once against the floor, the sound small but certain, like the promise of loyalty before a storm. The storm had rolled in quietly, like a thief. By midnight, the mountains around Pine Hollow were drowning in a curtain of cold rain. Lightning flickered over the ridge, painting the cabin's windows in ghostly white flashes. Inside, Jack Thompson sat alone at his workbench in the dim light of a single desk lamp. The air smelled of oil, wet earth, and old secrets. Rusty lay by the door, his head resting on his paws, amber eyes fixed on his master with a mix of loyalty and worry. Jack couldn't sleep. The red blinking light of the Graytech chip still pulsed on the table, steady as a heartbeat. He'd buried it under an old rag, but it didn't help. Every few seconds, the glow leaked through like a warning. He had been through too many missions to ignore that kind of signal. Somewhere out there, someone was listening, but curiosity had always been both his gift and his curse. He took a slow breath and pulled the rag aside. "All right, let's see what kind of devil you are," he muttered. He connected the chip to his old laptop again, this time in the small workshop beside the cabin. The place was cluttered with worn-out tools, engine parts, and the faint smell of diesel. A single bulb buzzed overhead, swinging slightly in the draft from a cracked window. The screen flickered once, then steadied. A folder appeared. Project Viper Genesis. Jack frowned. The name alone was enough to set his pulse racing. He clicked it. The screen turned black, then faded into a grainy video feed, time-stamped May 4th, 2018. The image showed a sterile white laboratory. Fluorescent lights glared off metal tables. Figures in gray uniforms moved in the background, their faces blurred by distortion. At the center of the frame sat a man strapped into a restraint chair, shaven head, a faint scar running down the left side of his face, and a look of exhaustion mixed with defiance. His chest was bare, lined with surgical ports, the ribs laced with visible alloy beneath the skin. Jack froze. The man's dog tags gleamed briefly under the light. Lee Cole, P. McAdams. A voice off-screen spoke, male, steady, clinical. Subject 12, ready for neural interface calibration. McAdams turned toward the camera, his voice hoarse but clear. "If you're watching this, they lied to you. They said we volunteered. We didn't. We were drafted, reprogrammed, rebuilt, until we couldn't tell flesh from wire." His breath hitched, and his eyes darted off camera. Graytech called it salvation, but it's damnation in steel. We wanted out. They made sure we didn't leave breathing. Jack's throat tightened. He'd heard the rumors before, men disappearing from test squadrons, whispered names erased from files. Now he was staring at proof. In the background, alarms blared. The camera shook. Someone shouted, "Containment breach!" The image fractured into static. When it cleared again, McAdams was still on screen, blood streaking his temple. His voice dropped to a desperate whisper. "Whoever finds this, destroy it. Don't let them wake the others." Then the feed cut out. For a moment, only the sound of rain against the roof filled the room. Jack sat motionless, his hands trembling slightly. Rusty whined softly beside him, sensing the shift in his master's heartbeat. The laptop screen went black again. Then white letters began to appear across it, one by one, cold and precise. Unauthorized access detected. Retrieving source. Jack's stomach turned to ice. He yanked the cable out, but the message didn't vanish. It stayed burned into the screen. Then another line appeared. Signal trace active. Rusty rose suddenly, ears stiff, tail low. He gave a low growl deep in his throat. Jack turned off the lamp, the workshop plunging into darkness. The only light came from the faint flicker of the laptop screen. Outside, through the rain, came the low hum of an engine, then another. Tires crushed gravel. Jack's pulse quickened. No headlights, just the deep, deliberate rumble of a truck moving without lights through the woods. He reached for his rifle. "Rusty," he whispered. The dog's growl deepened, his body taut like a drawn bow. Jack killed the laptop, closed it fast, and slipped the chip into his pocket. He could hear doors slamming outside now. 2, maybe 3. Voices muffled by the rain. Professional, calm, not local hunters. He moved to the window and peered through the crack in the boards. The storm made it hard to see, but shapes moved in the tree line. Dark silhouettes, slow and disciplined. One carried a flashlight with the beam pointed at the ground. Another knelt by the gate. A third figure approached the porch steps. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a rain-soaked field jacket that shimmered faintly under the lightning. His movements were deliberate, confident. Jack caught a glimpse of his face, clean-shaven, sharp features, eyes cold as gunmetal. It was a face he recognized from years ago. Harlan Briggs. The Graytech security chief looked older, the silver in his hair catching the rain, but the same ruthless precision burned in his expression. He raised his hand, signaling his men to spread out. "Evening, Jack," Briggs called, his voice calm, steady, the tone of someone who always assumed control. "We need to talk." Jack didn't answer. He moved silently through the shadows, signaling Rusty to stay low. He could see 3 men total, 2 flanking the porch, 1 covering the back. Military pattern, not random. Briggs continued, voice still smooth, but edged with warning. "You've found something that doesn't belong to you. Something dangerous. Let's not make this harder than it needs to be." Jack's jaw clenched. "You sent the damn drones," he muttered under his breath. Rusty let out a soft growl, the sound rumbling in the dark. "Easy, boy," Jack whispered. Thunder cracked overhead, shaking the windows. Briggs's team moved closer, flashlights sweeping across the yard. Jack ducked behind his workbench, checking his ammo. Not much. He wasn't going to win a firefight, not against Graytech's private army. But he could buy time. He slipped the chip into Rusty's collar pouch, the same one he used for first aid gauze during hunts. The dog's eyes met his, full of understanding. "Stay quiet. You hear me? Quiet." Rusty pressed against his knee once, the silent acknowledgement of a soldier's partner. Outside, Briggs' calm voice cut through the rain. "Jack, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to contain a mistake. That chip, it's not what you think it is. It's not information. It's a key." Jack frowned. "A key to what?" Briggs's expression darkened. "To something that was never supposed to wake up." Before Jack could move, the back window shattered. A flashbang exploded in white light, shaking the room. Rusty barked furiously, leaping between Jack and the blast. Jack's ears rang. Shadows stormed the door. He rolled behind the bench, firing once, twice, just enough to break their line. A figure fell, cursing. Briggs shouted something over the storm, but Jack couldn't make out the words. Rusty darted toward the open door, agile, fast. Jack followed, ducking into the rain. The forest swallowed them both in darkness. Behind him, Briggs' voice echoed, hard as stone. "He's got the chip! Do not let that dog out of your sight!" The headlights of the trucks flicked on at last, piercing the night. Jack and Rusty sprinted down the ravine path, the storm lashing at their backs, the forest roaring with thunder. The rain turned to mist, the ground slick beneath their boots and paws. Jack's breath came ragged, but his grip on the rifle stayed firm. Rusty ran ahead, guiding him through the dark like instinct incarnate. Behind them, voices shouted, engines roared, and the world of shadows came alive. The rain had not stopped since midnight, hammering the mountain slopes like an army marching toward dawn. Jack Thompson and Rusty were still deep in the woods, soaked to the bone, hiding among the wet pines. The night smelled of smoke and cordite, the aftertaste of violence. Behind them, his cabin was burning, It started only minutes after they escaped the workshop ambush. The gray tech trucks had regrouped fast, their engines growling low through the mist. Jack knew the sound of a perimeter sweep. Tight, tactical, efficient. Briggs's men weren't there to scare him. They were there to erase him. When he spotted the flicker of light through the trees, torches, or maybe drones, he knew they had found the cabin again. He pressed a hand to Rusty's flank. "Stay close, boy," he whispered. The shepherd's fur was soaked and bristled, his amber eyes alert, his breath shallow but steady. 5 years together had turned them into something beyond a man and a dog. They were a single heartbeat, split in 2 bodies. Then came the first explosion. A grenade tore through the porch, splintering the front door into a burst of flame and shrapnel. The blast hurled Jack backward into the wall. Rusty barked sharply, warning and defiance in one breath. Smoke filled the room. The heat rolled over them like a living thing. Jack's instincts took over. The Marine in him moved before the man could think. He rolled to his feet, grabbed the rifle, and kicked over the workbench to use as cover. The room crackled with heat. Through the haze, silhouettes moved. Men in tactical gear, helmets slick with rain, visors reflecting the firelight. He fired once. A cry. Another silhouette fell. Rusty bolted through the shattered window, glass flying around him like shards of ice. Outside, Jack heard a scuffle, Rusty's low growl, the snap of teeth, a man's scream cut short. Then something crashed behind him, another charge through the back window. Jack turned just as a mercenary lunged in, knife drawn. The man was broad, muscular, face hidden behind a scarf soaked dark. Jack caught his wrist, twisted, and drove the man's hand into the wall. The knife clattered to the floor. Jack's elbow came down like a hammer, 1, 2, until the man fell. The smell of smoke was thicker now, choking the air. The ceiling groaned, sparks fell. Rusty reappeared at the door, teeth bared, dragging at Jack's sleeve. The dog's fur was blackened at the tips, eyes wide with fear and urgency. I know, Jack rasped. He snatched the photo of McAdams and the half-burned dog tag from the table, stuffed them into his jacket, then followed Rusty out into the storm. The rain hissed as it met the flames, turning smoke to steam. The cabin crackled, bright against the darkness, a beacon for the men chasing him. Rusty led the way down the ridge, paws splashing through the mud. Behind them, gunfire cut through the night, short bursts, controlled. Jack ducked behind a fallen log, gripping Rusty's collar. The cabin's roof finally gave way with a roar. The glow lit up the trees like dawn. Jack clenched his teeth. "That's it, boy," he whispered. "Home's gone." They moved through the forest until the fire was just a red smudge on the horizon. The rain chilled their bones, but it also covered their tracks. By dawn, they reached the edge of the county road, a narrow, cracked strip of asphalt leading toward the small town of Maple Ridge. Jack limped slightly, a bruise swelling along his ribs. Rusty stayed close, his steps slowing. Jack could feel the dog's exhaustion in every movement. They needed shelter, food, warmth, anything that wasn't the cold embrace of the woods. That's when they saw the light. A small diner stood alone by the roadside, its neon sign flickering weakly. Martha's Kitchen, open 24 hours. Smoke curled from its chimney. The smell of coffee drifted through the rain. Jack hesitated. After everything, the normalcy of it almost felt wrong. But Rusty looked up at him, tail wagging weakly. They pushed the door open. The warmth hit like a blessing. Inside, the diner was quiet, filled with the hum of a jukebox playing an old Patsy Cline song. Behind the counter stood a woman in her late 40s, tall, slender, with silver threads in her auburn hair, and a face that carried both beauty and battle scars. Her hands moved with the calm efficiency of someone who had seen worse than spilled coffee. "Morning," she said softly, wiping a cup. Her voice had the rasp of cigarettes and long nights. "You look like you walked through hell." "Close enough," Jack muttered, shaking off the rain. Rusty sat by his feet, dripping water onto the floor. The woman's gaze softened when she saw the dog. "Well, I'll be. That's a fine shepherd you got there. Sit anywhere you like, hun." Jack nodded, choosing the corner booth by the window. The warmth seeped into his bones as he sipped the coffee she brought. Strong, bitter, perfect. After a few minutes, she came over again, curiosity glinting behind her tired smile. "Name's Martha. Been running this place 15 years. You're not from around here, are you?" "Not anymore," Jack said. She studied him. The bruises, the cuts on his knuckles, the way he kept glancing at the window. "You're military," she said finally. It wasn't a question. "Used to be," he replied. Martha nodded slowly. "I can tell. My husband was a medic. We served in Kandahar together before he passed." She looked at Rusty. "And you're still fighting ghosts, huh?" Jack gave a faint smile. "Seems like the ghosts started fighting back." Something in his tone made her expression shift. She poured him another cup. "Want to talk about it?" He hesitated, then reached into his jacket and pulled out the photo. McAdams, smiling in uniform, the words, Project Viper. Genesis scrawled faintly on the bottom. "You ever seen this man?" Martha leaned closer, her brow furrowing. For a moment, silence. Then she whispered, "Lord Almighty, I know him." Jack's eyes lifted. "You're sure?" She nodded, voice trembling. "I was a field nurse at Camp Banner Ridge in 2018. He came in after some kind of crash. Burns, fractures, half his chest wrapped in steel. He said Graytech was rebuilding him. I thought he was delirious, until they came and took him away in the middle of the night." Jack leaned forward. "Did he say anything else?" Martha's gaze drifted to the rain-streaked window. "Only one thing. He said, Viper will come back, when the world needs a voice for what's right." I thought he was just rambling. But if you've got that photo, maybe he wasn't. Rusty gave a soft whine, resting his head on Jack's knee. Jack stared at the photo again, McAdams, caught between human and machine, between creation and curse. Martha's eyes softened. "You need a place to rest. There's a room out back. For vets, no charge. You can dry off, get your bearings." Jack hesitated. "That's kind of you, ma'am, but—" She raised a hand. "No, but. I can tell when someone's running from something big. Just don't bring it through my front door again, all right?" Jack gave a small nod. "Fair deal." As he followed her to the back hallway, he glanced once more through the diner's rain-blurred window. Across the street, hidden in the trees, a faint glimmer of light flickered, the reflection of binoculars, or maybe a scope. Rusty's ears perked, a low growl rumbling from his chest. Jack's jaw tightened. The war wasn't done with them yet. The morning news crackled faintly from an old radio on the counter of Martha's kitchen, the voice of a reporter slicing through the clatter of rain and dishes. Local authorities have issued an arrest warrant for former Marine Jack Thompson, accused of arson, assault, and destruction of government property near Pine Hollow. Sources report that Thompson, suffering from post-traumatic episodes, may be armed and unstable. The words were sterile, surgical, and heavy with intent. Jack sat in the booth, hat pulled low, jaw tight. His reflection in the window looked older than he remembered, hollow eyes, days of stubble, and a weariness carved deep into the lines of his face. Rusty lay under the table, head on his paws, ears twitching at every passing car. Martha turned the radio off with a sharp twist of her wrist. "They move fast," she said softly. "Too fast for a small-town sheriff." Jack didn't answer. He didn't need to. They both knew Graytech's hand was behind it. Martha poured him a fresh cup of coffee, her hand steady despite the tension in her eyes. "You've stirred up something big, Jack. They're not going to stop until they bury you or break you." Jack looked up, his voice quiet but hard. "Then I'll make damn sure they choke on the dirt." Outside, the rain had thinned to a mist. The diner looked almost peaceful, but Jack knew better. The reflections on the glass shifted too often. Someone was watching. He reached into his jacket, pulled out McAdams' scorched photo, and slid it across the table. "You said he mentioned something. Viper will return when the world needs a voice for what's right. Did he ever say where he worked before Graytech took him?" Martha frowned, her brow creasing as she searched her memory. "He used to talk about a reservoir up north, a decommissioned military site near Lake Garnett. Said it was where they trained the new pilots, but he called it something else once." She paused. "Echo Hollow." Jack nodded slowly. "That's where we go next." Rusty's tail thumped once under the table, as if he understood. That night, they left the diner under a sky bruised with storm clouds. Martha had packed a small bag, medical supplies, canned food, and a revolver older than she was. She wore her faded army jacket again, the one with the patch half torn off on the shoulder. "If Greytech's after you," she said, "they'll come for me too. I'd rather meet the devil in the open than wait for him to knock." Jack gave a reluctant smile. "You don't scare easy." 40 years of cleaning up men's mistakes," she replied. "Fear's just another thing to carry." They drove through the night in Martha's rusted Chevy pickup, headlights dimmed. The world outside blurred into streaks of gray forest and fog. Jack kept his rifle across his lap, eyes scanning the mirrors. Rusty sat in the back seat, ears perked, nose pressed to the window. Every now and then, he gave a low growl, not of fear, but of awareness. Hours later, the truck rolled to a stop near the edge of Lake Garnett. The water stretched like a sheet of black glass beneath the moonlight. The area was fenced, rusted signs warning, "Restricted military property, no entry." The place had been abandoned for decades, but Jack could feel the quiet hum of machinery beneath the surface, like a ghost heartbeat. They cut the fence and moved silently toward the dam. The structure loomed like a sleeping giant, concrete walls scarred by time, vines crawling up its face. At its base was a rusted hatch half buried in mud. Martha crouched beside it, tracing the faded lettering with her finger. "Maintenance access B12, she read aloud. "Looks old, but I can get it open." Jack knelt beside her, helping pry the hatch free. The metal screeched, the sound echoing over the still lake. Inside, a narrow staircase spiraled down into darkness. Jack switched on his flashlight. "Stay close." The air grew colder as they descended, the walls sweating moisture. Rusty padded carefully behind them, sniffing the damp air. The passage opened into a long underground corridor lined with glass chambers, each one cracked or shattered. Inside, shadows of what used to be human forms slumped against the walls. Martha's breath caught. "Dear God!" Jack stepped closer, the beam of light revealing half-fused bodies, bones welded to metal, synthetic veins threaded through flesh. Some still wore tattered uniforms bearing military insignias. Others were stripped bare, numbers tattooed into their synthetic skin. It wasn't a lab, it was a grave. Martha covered her mouth, tears stinging her eyes. "They experimented on them." Jack's jaw clenched, his voice a low whisper. "Project Viper Genesis." They moved deeper into the corridor. Rusty's growl rumbled in the silence. At the far end, a body lay slumped against the control console. Its chest was caved in, but the uniform patch still clung to the shoulder. Lieutenant Colger P. McAdams. Jack knelt slowly, brushing the dust from the man's sleeve. The half-mechanical face was frozen mid-expression, not of fear, but defiance. Beneath the charred layers of titanium, the faint gleam of human eyes still lingered. Martha whispered, "You knew him, didn't you?" Jack nodded, voice tight. "He was my CO, the kind of man who never left a soldier behind, until now." Rusty sat beside the corpse, his ears drooping, a soft whine escaping him. The dog's empathy was uncanny, as if he sensed the sorrow trapped within the cold shell of metal. Jack stood, staring at the console. Dust covered the controls, but one small indicator still blinked faintly. A power reserve. He wiped the surface, revealing a line of text. "Data transfer failed. Manual override required." He frowned. Whatever McAdams was trying to do before he died, it wasn't finished. Martha looked uneasy. "Jack, if this thing's still powered, Greytech might still be listening." He didn't respond. His eyes lingered on the glowing indicator, a heartbeat left unfinished. He placed his hand gently on the machine, bowing his head. "Sir," he whispered, voice trembling, "if your soul's still anywhere near this place, I swear, I'll finish what you started. I'll bring them down." Rusty leaned against his leg, silent and still. Then, faintly, somewhere within the machinery, a low mechanical tone hummed, a single pulse, deep and resonant like an answer. The lights flickered once through the corridor, then died again. Jack looked to Martha, his face set. "We're not running anymore." But far above them, on a ridge overlooking the lake, a drone's red eye blinked in the dark, watching, recording, and transmitting everything. The storm had rolled in from the east, devouring the horizon in a wall of black clouds and wind. The air tasted of metal and rain, carrying the hum of distant thunder that crawled over the Kentucky hills. Jack stood at the edge of the dam, his jacket torn, one sleeve soaked with blood where a bullet had grazed his arm. Martha knelt beside a weathered crate, clutching the portable drive that held everything McAdams had died for: Graytek's crimes, their secret soldiers, their plans. Behind them, the low growl of Rusty echoed through the rain, the dog's fur slicked dark, eyes sharp, body tense like a drawn bow. From across the dam, headlights pierced through the mist. 3 black SUVs crawled up the access road. No sirens, no insignia, just shadows with purpose. Jack raised the rifle, his breath slow, steady, the Marine in him surfacing. "They're here," he said, voice gravel rough. Martha's face was pale but determined. "There's nowhere to run." "There's always somewhere," he answered, chambering around. The first flash of muzzle fire split the storm. Bullets screamed against concrete, sparking off the railings. Jack ducked, pulling Martha down behind the barrier. Rusty barked, low and guttural, like thunder with a heartbeat. Jack returned fire, short, controlled bursts, but they were outnumbered. From behind the vehicles, 4 men advanced in formation, moving with precision. Their leader, Agent Nolan Reeves, was a tall, muscular man in his mid-30s, clean-shaven with a scar running from temple to jaw. He was a professional killer, the kind who didn't blink when he shot, and his cold blue eyes gave away nothing but focus. Reeves had once been Army intelligence. Discharged after an operation in Syria went sideways. Graytek picked him up the week after. He walked like a man who still believed he was doing his country's work. "Thompson," Reeves's voice carried across the dam, "you've got something that doesn't belong to you. Drop the drive, and maybe we let the woman live." Jack smirked grimly. "You should have sent someone who believes that lie." Reeves raised a hand, and another volley erupted. A bullet clipped the rail beside Jack's head. The old Marine gritted his teeth, pressing his bleeding arm against his chest. "Martha, get ready to move." Martha grabbed the case and slid it inside her backpack. The rain pelted harder now, a curtain of water blurring vision. Rusty crouched low beside Jack, tail straight, muscles rippling under his soaked coat. The dog's breath came in hot bursts, eyes locked on the advancing men. "On my mark," Jack whispered. Then the dam shuddered, a sudden metallic groan deep beneath their feet. Lightning flashed, revealing the reservoir swelling, frothing with rain overflow. Reeves cursed, signaling his men to push forward faster. Jack fired again, dropping one. The second ducked behind a pillar. Reeves barked orders, his voice like a whip. Rusty moved before anyone could stop him, a streak of fur and fury leaping through the haze. He lunged at one of the mercenaries who'd flanked them, teeth sinking into the man's arm, pulling him off balance. The rifle clattered across the concrete. Jack turned, fired once, and the man went down. Rusty shook loose, his body trembling with adrenaline, but unhurt. "Good boy!" Jack shouted, but the victory lasted only a breath. Reeves's sniper, positioned on a ridge across the lake, fired. The shot hit Jack in the shoulder, spinning him sideways. His rifle slipped from his hands, clattering toward the railing. Martha screamed, "Jack!" He staggered, one knee buckling, the wind tearing at him. The world tilted, the edge of the dam yawning below, 100 feet of roaring water. The backpack, the drive, slipped from Martha's shoulder, sliding across the slick concrete. Rusty darted toward it, paws skidding. The pack teetered on the edge and fell, snagged for a split second on a broken cable. Jack, half collapsed, saw it happening in slow motion. "Rusty, no!" But the dog was already moving. With a burst of raw instinct, Rusty leapt, a blur against the storm, teeth clamping down on the strap just as it slipped free. His body slammed into the railing, claws scraping for purchase. The water below churned like a monster's mouth. "Hold on, boy!" Jack roared, crawling forward despite the pain. He reached out, blood mixing with rain, fingers brushing Rusty's collar. Martha grabbed his other arm, anchoring him. Together, they hauled the shepherd up, inch by inch, until he collapsed onto the concrete, the drive still dangling from his jaws. Jack gathered the trembling dog into his arms, chest heaving, whispering through the storm, "You saved it. You saved all of us." Reeves shouted, "Move in!" The mercenaries began to close the distance again, methodical, relentless. Then a horn blared from the road below, cutting through the rain like a blade. A pair of flashing amber lights climbed the hill. Not Graytex vehicles, but an old ambulance, engine roaring in protest. The driver, a young man in his late 20s with sandy hair, freckles, and a mechanic's uniform, leaned out the window. "Get in if you're still breathing." Jack squinted through the rain, disbelief flickering in his expression. "Cole?" Deputy Cole Harris had once been one of Jack's students at the vocational workshop in town. The quiet one, always tinkering with engines long after class. Back then, he'd been lanky, nervous, unsure of his place in the world. Now he was broader, his jaw lined with a few days' stubble, eyes steady, but not yet hardened by the cruelty of age. Jack and Martha didn't hesitate. They ran, Rusty limping at their heels. Bullets whined through the air, chipping asphalt as they dove into the back of the ambulance. Cole slammed the gear shift, tires squealing as the old vehicle tore down the access road. The storm swallowed them. Inside the ambulance, the red emergency light flickered weakly, painting them all in shifting crimson. Jack leaned back against the gurney, breathing raggedly. Martha tore open a bandage and pressed it to his shoulder wound. "Hold still," she said, voice trembling. Cole glanced back from the driver's seat, shouting over the engine. "You still teaching folks to fix carburetors with duct tape, sir?" Jack managed a tired grin. "Guess it paid off." Cole's expression softened. "I saw the news. Didn't believe a damn word of it. I've seen too many men like you to mistake truth for TV." His knuckles tightened on the wheel. "And besides, a man like you doesn't lie. He just keeps his promises." The words hit Jack harder than any bullet. He turned his head toward the window, hiding the emotion in his eyes. Rusty lay beside him, breathing shallow but steady, his paw resting on Jack's boot like an oath. As they disappeared into the night, the storm finally broke behind them. The dam was now just a distant silhouette swallowed by rain, but in the dark sky above, another drone drifted quietly, tracking their escape. Inside the control van miles away, Sarah Wynne stared at the feed, her face pale, eyes full of conflict. She turned to Reeves's superior on the monitor, a woman with steel-gray hair and a voice like winter. "Ma'am," Sarah said, voice tight, "you told me Project Viper was decommissioned." The woman's lips curved in a thin, cold smile. "Dr. Wynne, you of all people should know. The truth is just another prototype." Dawn broke like a bruise across the Kentucky sky, muted pink bleeding into gray, the kind of morning that carried both sorrow and renewal. The old ambulance rattled down a forest road, its engine protesting every mile, but the three souls inside were silent. Jack sat in the back, one arm in a sling, face pale beneath the bruises. Martha dozed against the wall, exhaustion carving deep lines into her weathered face. Rusty lay across Jack's boots, bandaged paw resting on the floor, his eyes half-lidded but alert, as if he refused to surrender, even to rest. Cole drove, his jaw tight, the young deputy's freckles standing out under the thin light. They stopped near an abandoned service station on the outskirts of Lexington. The sign above the door read, "Walker's Auto Repair," letters chipped and faded. Jack stepped out carefully, cradling the old laptop that now contained the drive Rusty had saved. "We'll use the satellite uplink here," he said, "off-grid enough to buy us a few minutes." Martha opened the rusted shutters, letting the weak morning light spill into the dusty garage. "Few minutes," she muttered. "Better make 'em count." Cole went to work, dragging out an old generator and coaxing it to life. "My granddad ran a CB network here in the 80s, he said. "Still got some of the wiring intact." Jack managed a faint smile. "Guess stubbornness runs in Kentucky blood." They connected the laptop to the makeshift network, static flickering across the cracked screen. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a secure login prompt appeared, faint green text on black. Jack hesitated. "Cole, ever heard of a guy named Benjamin Holt?" Cole frowned. "The reporter? The one who blew open that weapons contract scandal a few years back?" "Yeah," Jack said quietly. "He's the only one left who'll listen." Rusty lifted his head, watching as Jack typed. The hum of the generator filled the silence, steady and rhythmic like a heartbeat. After a few moments, a response blinked onto the screen. "Secure channel established. Benjamin Holt." "Who is this?" "Jack Thompson. A soldier with ghosts to bury. I have proof. Project Viper Genesis, Graytech Defense." A pause. Then, Send it. All of it. Jack uploaded the files, McAdams's logs, the footage, the lab documents, even the biometric schematics. As the progress bar filled, Martha whispered, "Once it's out, there's no taking it back." Jack's eyes stayed fixed on the screen. "That's the point." When the last byte sent, Holt replied, "If this is real, you just lit a fuse the size of Washington. Stay hidden. I'll do the rest." Minutes later, the first tremors began. By noon, Graytech's headquarters in Virginia buzzed with panic. Agents in black suits stormed the glass building, escorted by uniformed military police. At the center of it all stood Sarah Wynne, tall, lean, her dark auburn hair tied into a severe knot. Her pale skin looked almost translucent under the fluorescent lights. For years, her calm intellect and quiet voice had been her armor, but now cracks ran deep beneath her composure. She watched as armed FBI teams tore through the hallways, confiscating servers, locking down labs. The glass walls reflected her face, tired, haunted, but resolute. When two agents approached, she raised her ID. "Dr. Sarah Wynne," she said, "Director of Bioneural Systems. I'm cooperating." One of the agents, a broad-shouldered man with a shaved head and piercing brown eyes, nodded curtly. "Then you'll start by telling us where the backups are." Sarah led them to the lower lab, her steps slow but certain. As they descended, she spoke quietly, almost to herself. "You know, when we started Project Viper, we thought we were saving lives, making pilots stronger, faster, able to withstand trauma. But somewhere along the line, we forgot they were still human." The agent's expression softened for a heartbeat. "And McAdams?" Her voice broke. "He was the first to remind us what we became." They reached the vault. Sarah keyed in the override, the heavy door unlocking with a hiss. Inside were rows of terminals and glowing servers, Graytech's empire of ghosts. "Everything you need is here," she said. Then, for the first time, she smiled, weary, hollow, but free. Hours later, headlines erupted across the country. Graytech exposed, private military contractor accused of human experimentation. Project Viper, government funding frozen amid scandal. Fallen heroes or forgotten victims. The world reacted with outrage and disbelief. Within days, congressional hearings were scheduled. CEO Evelyn Cade, the cold gray-haired woman behind the curtain, was arrested in a dawn raid. McAdams's name appeared again, this time on the screen of national news, beside the words, "Posthumous Medal of Honor recommended." At Martha's Diner, the old radio that once spread, lies now carried the truth. Reporters spoke of evidence provided by an anonymous veteran source. Jack sat in the corner booth, arm bandaged, cap pulled low. Rusty sat proudly beside him, tail wagging, a bright red scarf around his neck. A gift from Martha, embroidered with a single word, valor. Cole leaned against the counter, sipping coffee, his young face lit with quiet pride. "They're calling him a hero," he said, nodding at the dog. "Guess fame's gone to his head." Rusty barked once, sharp and cheerful, as if in agreement. Jack chuckled softly. "He earned it more than I did." The diner door opened, and a gust of spring air swept in. Sarah Wynne stepped inside, no longer in her corporate suit, but a simple gray jacket and jeans. Her hair was loose, brushing her shoulders, her face thinner than before, but somehow lighter. Martha eyed her warily. "You've got nerve showing up here." Sarah nodded. "I know, but I came to thank him." She turned to Jack. "You didn't just expose Graytech. You gave the world back its conscience." Jack's eyes softened. "And what about you? You were part of it." "I was," she said quietly. "But someone had to turn the key from the inside." For a long moment, there was silence, the kind that comes not from tension, but from understanding. Then Martha poured her a cup of coffee and slid it across the counter. "Redemption costs extra," she said dryly. Sarah smiled faintly. "I'll pay in truth." Outside, the sound of children laughing drifted through the air. A small crowd had gathered near the diner window, locals holding signs with Rusty's photo printed on them. Someone had written, "The Four-Legged Veteran," in bold letters. Cameras flashed as they waved. Rusty perked up, wagging his tail, posing proudly like he somehow knew the weight of it all. Jack scratched his ear, voice low. "Looks like you're the famous one now, partner. Later that evening, as the sun melted into gold over the ridges, the TV inside Martha's diner played a special broadcast. A female anchor's voice filled the room. Tonight, we honor retired Marine Jack Thompson and his K-9 companion, Rusty, whose bravery and loyalty helped uncover one of the darkest military scandals in modern history. The screen showed footage of Rusty sitting beside the American flag, his red scarf bright against the gray background. The anchor smiled. In the face of corruption and silence, courage found its bark. Jack turned down the volume. Outside the window, the world seemed calm for once. Rusty lay with his head on Jack's boot, watching fireflies rise like stars reborn. Jack whispered, almost to himself, "We kept our promise, old friend." And somewhere, far away in the mountains where it all began, the wind carried a sound, faint but steady, like rotor blades turning once more, not as a weapon, but as a memory. The morning sun crept over the Kentucky hills, spilling gold over the valley where the forest had once burned. The air smelled of cedar and oil now, new life forged from ash. A year had passed since the storm, since the night truth clawed its way from the dark. The world had moved on, but here, in a clearing between two oaks, Jack Thompson was building something worth staying for. The small workshop stood proud, though simple. Its wooden beams polished smooth, the paint a deep forest green. A sign hung above the door, hand-carved and imperfect, but made with love. Rusty's Garage and Rescue. Beneath it, smaller letters read, "Where every soul deserves a second chance." Jack wiped the sweat from his brow, tightening the last bolt on a refurbished engine block. He was 49 now, his beard streaked with silver, lines at the corners of his eyes deeper but softer. The war inside him had quieted, replaced by the hum of work, the rhythm of healing. His left arm still ached when the rain came, but the pain no longer ruled him. It reminded him he was still alive. The soft pad of paws approached from behind. Rusty came trotting out of the sunlight, tail swaying like an old flag in a gentle breeze. His muzzle had grayed over the year, and one ear drooped now, the mark of too many battles and too much loyalty. Around his neck hung the K-9 Medal of Honor, polished to a shine. "Morning, Sergeant," Jack said, smiling. Rusty huffed, tail thumping once against the dirt, and then, as he did every morning, went to his favorite spot by the porch steps to lie down, half guard, half retirement. Across the road, a small diner's sign flickered to life. Martha's Table, where the coffee's stronger than the past. Martha herself stepped outside, her hair more silver than gold now, tied back in a neat bun. She wore her old leather apron and waved a spatula in mock salute. "You're late for breakfast again, soldier," she shouted. Jack grinned. "You're early for yelling." She laughed, a sound that carried warmth instead of weariness. Martha had rebuilt her diner just down from Jack's workshop so she could keep an eye on the fool who keeps adopting stray mechanics and dogs. And she had indeed adopted both. Inside her diner, she'd hung photos of every veteran who'd passed through their doors, including one of McAdams, his half-smile forever frozen in uniform, the caption beneath it simple, "All heart." The crunch of tires on gravel drew Jack's attention. A tan pickup pulled into the driveway, and Cole Harris climbed out. He was wearing a sheriff's uniform now, badge shining, sleeves rolled up to the elbow. His hair was still the same sandy mess, but he carried himself with quiet confidence, the boy replaced by a man. "Garage looks good, sir," Cole said, leaning against the truck. "Got room for one more set of hands?" Jack handed him a wrench. "Only if you don't mind honest work." Cole laughed. "That's a first for me." Inside the garage, an old jukebox Martha had donated hummed to life, playing something slow and full of soul, Sam Cooke's "A Change Is Gonna Come." Jack worked beside Cole, showing him how to rebuild a carburetor. "See this?" Jack said, gesturing. "You don't fix it by force. You fix it by understanding what broke." Cole nodded. "That how you fix people too?" Jack smiled faintly. "If they let you." By afternoon, the place was alive with motion. 2 veterans from the nearby rehab center rolled in, a woman named Elena, tall, with close-cropped black hair and a missing hand, and a quiet man named Derek, whose gentle way with the rescue dogs made him almost part of the pack. Jack welcomed them both without ceremony. "No ranks here," he said, "just stories we ain't done writing." They worked until the sun began to sink. painting the sky in streaks of copper and rose. The garage doors stood open, the scent of motor oil and pine mingling with Martha's pie baking across the road. Rusty snored softly by the porch, tail twitching in dreams. As evening fell, Jack cleaned his hands and looked toward the clearing by the edge of the woods. There, a new monument rose, polished stone framed by steel wings. On its face, engraved in simple letters, were the words, "For those who were half machine, but all heart." It stood beneath the whispering pines, the wind curling around it like an old song. Jack approached, removing his cap, the weight of memory pressing gently, but not painfully now. He knelt, placing a small wrench at the base of the statue, a soldier's offering in the language of repair. "We made it, buddy," he murmured. Rusty padded over, joints stiff but spirit unbroken, and sat beside him. The dog leaned his head against Jack's leg, nose brushing the metal on his chest. For a long moment, the world was still except for the wind through the trees, soft, rhythmic, almost like rotor blades turning far away. The sound stirred a smile on Jack's face. Not grief, not loss, just remembrance. From behind him, Martha called out, "Dinner's getting cold, hero." Jack rose slowly, giving one last look to the monument. "Coming," he said. Then, to Rusty, "Come on, old man, let's eat before she drafts us into dish duty again." Rusty barked once, the sound echoing through the hills like laughter. Together they walked back toward the glow of the diner windows, their silhouettes framed in the fading light. The last rays of sunset glinted off the metal plaque as the wind sighed through the pines. And if one listened closely, the breeze carried a faint, ghostly hum, like the song of a bell viper returning home. In the quiet years that followed, the legend of Rusty's Garage and Rescue grew beyond Kentucky's hills. Veterans came from distant towns, carrying scars you couldn't see, and left with oil on their hands and hope in their hearts. Stray dogs found homes, broken engines roared again. But more than that, broken people remembered how to stand. Jack never called himself a hero. He'd just say, "We fix what others forgot." Yet in that simple creed, a community was reborn. One bolt, one heartbeat, one act of kindness at a time. Martha's Diner became their sanctuary, laughter echoing against the scent of coffee and apple pie. Cole brought recruits to learn not just about engines, but about trust. Sarah Wynn, now working with a nonprofit for veterans, would visit sometimes, her once haunted eyes bright again. And through it all, Rusty remained the town's silent guardian, a living symbol of courage and faithfulness. His metal gleamed by the doorway, right where the sunlight always found it. Because in the end, Project Viper was never just about machines or wars or secrets. It was about the miracle of rebuilding, the quiet grace of starting again. Jack once said, "God doesn't always send thunder to change the world. Sometimes he sends a dog who refuses to give up, a neighbor who shows up when you're down, or a spark that reminds you it's not over yet." So, if you're watching this now, remember, miracles aren't far away. They live in the small things, a helping hand, a loyal heart, a moment of forgiveness that heals more than words ever could. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a little faith today. Leave a comment below about what moment spoke to you most. And if you believe in second chances, in the power of loyalty and grace, please like, subscribe, and join us for more stories that celebrate the light God still writes into our lives. May the Lord bless you and your loved ones with peace, courage, and the reminder that every act of love is a miracle still in motion.